Get to know your finances on the Money Wake Up Call. Now here's your host, Dwayne Ellis.
Good day, everyone. My name is Dwayne Ellis, and I am the founder of the Wealth Syndicate, which is a financial planning firm in Silver Spring, Maryland. And I want to thank you all for tuning into the Money Wake Up Call. This is an opportunity for us to have a discussion about one of the more important things in our life, money and finance, and what should we do with it and what we should not do with it. Really, the point of this particular broadcast is to really just bring to light certain topics that, you're not going to hear everywhere else. And I would also say that, being 17 years in the business of being a financial advisor, you're not going to hear it from somebody who's on the ground working with people every day, every week, every month, every year, working with their finances. We spend a lot of time talking to them. So normally people like that don't spend a whole lot of time on the on the video machine. And that might be something to think about. If they can do videos every single day, they may, I don't know how they do that and talk to clients every single day, but that's a topic for another time. So the Money Wake Up Call is just a couple of minutes of me talking about things I believe are relevant when we're talking about money, finance, etc. So want to wrap this particular topic up because we've done 3 videos before this talking about the Black wealth gap. How do we close it? What are the factors involved in it? What it actually is, and what it is the gap in wealth between the African-American community and other communities. And how do we close that gap? We know there's a big gap, and I'm going to show you a couple of things to illustrate that. But I always want my talks to be solution-based. So once we quickly look at the problem, then how do we solve it? And that is really, my goal for this particular, it's really my goal, period, being in this profession. We know that we have issues. The point is, how do we solve those issues, or how do we get on the road to solving those issues? That's what's really important to me. So we're going to talk about another aspect of this Black wealth gap, which I think is super important because it's something that we have control of. As I was doing research on this particular topic, it's a lot of things we don't have control of. And I would say individually. We don't have control of redlining. We don't have control of, and when I talk about redlining, I'm talking about the housing industry. We don't have control of appraisals in certain communities. And we've seen other articles where that is a factor in the Black wealth gap, making homes, less in value in certain communities than in other communities. We don't have control over that. But I want to focus on what we do have control of. And I think I've done that in the first couple of videos. If you missed them, go back and look at them. Those are the things we can control. So here's something else that we really can control. Our savings rate. How much of our income, revenue, whatever we're doing as a business owner or an employee, how much are we putting away? And being in this business for a while, I almost know the answer to that, but I will submit to you that it's not enough. We have to put away more in savings that we actually save. And they normally say save for a rainy day, but just save, period. We have to make savings a priority in all of our households if we're going to close this Black wealth gap. So let me present a couple things to you and share a screen that I have up. Now, this is a headline, and I want to give the people that wrote the article the credit. It was an article done in 2021, Wealth Matters, the Black and White Wealth Gap before and after the pandemic. So they wrote this article really kind of right after the pandemic to illustrate how money, was moving, during the pandemic and before the pandemic. So, but here's the point I want to illustrate. Black households have fewer emergency savings to fall back on during the pandemic. And I will submit to you that before the pandemic, we still had less savings to fall back on as well. But it was felt definitely during the pandemic. So, for example, and I'll highlight this, for example, in 2020, about 46% of unemployed white households could not come up with $400 in an emergency, while 65% of unemployed Black households lacked access to $400 in such a situation. Now, we hear this, a lot. Can you come up with money if an emergency happens? And we all have our individual answers to that. But as a community, we have trouble with that. And that increases the gap. Because what happens, and I'm going to take this article off and kind of synthesize it for you a little bit. What happens is when an emergency happens, other communities are able to grab from or take from their savings because their savings numbers is bigger. And they're able to weather the storm of that particular incident and then move on past the incident. What happens in our community is that when the incident happens, we don't have the savings. So we end up having to borrow to get, through the incident or whatever happens. And then as we move past it, it creates a debt. So if we borrow from the bank, if we borrow from family members, doesn't matter who we borrowed from, we may have gotten over the issue, but we still kind of have an issue because we owe either the bank, whatever lending institution, or family member money back. So savings is critical. And I want to illuminate that particular point by showing you one other thing to finish out on that particular point of how do we handle when things come up. So let's give this article its proper due. This is from the Bipartisan Policy Center, Understanding and Addressing Racial and Ethnic Disparities in Housing. Now, we're not talking about housing, but oddly enough, as I was doing this research, when you look at, money and housing and wealth and all of that, there's a lot of tie-ins. And as we do these particular talks, I'm going to bring those tie-ins in. Here's the chart I want to illustrate. Now, this talks about financial status of renter households by race and ethnicity. And not really talking about whether you're a renter or a homeowner, even though it kind of looks the same. Look at the median cash savings from communities. And that's what I want to get to. The median cash savings, $5,000 for the Asian community, a little bit over $1,000, $1,050 for the African American community, Hispanic or Latino, $1,500. The white community, $2,500. But it's consistent even over a homeowner. Homeowner, Asian community, $16,000. African American community, $4,400. A little bit over $4,000 for the Hispanic or Latino community, and $13,000 for the white community. So what is this saying? What this is saying is that, whether it's an incident that comes up or something negative comes up, or whether it is just buying a home or closing in on your housing, you know, other communities make savings really a mentality. So let me put that on the ticker there. Savings is a mentality. You know, it's not something that you do. It's really your makeup. And if it's not your makeup, then you have to make it your makeup. You know, it's like anything that you do. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably do a future video on just saving strategies altogether. Because, you know, for a lot of us, it's not something that we do automatically. When we get our income in, we're looking at what we're going to purchase. We're going to pay our bills and such, and then we're looking on any niceties that we might want to get, you know, and savings is not really in there. Whereas in other communities, savings is ingrained in the culture. So be looking out for a video that just talks purely about how to save, how to really create that mentality of savings, because it's super important. So savings is a mentality. And what is a mentality? It's a mode or way of thinking or outlook. So your outlook is how you see things. So if you get an extra $1,000, an extra $5,000, what's the first thing? What's your outlook on that money? Because your outlook or your way of thinking or your mode of thinking or your mode is going to determine what happens with that $5,000. So we're going to talk a little more in depth about that as such. But I really wanted to just kind of close the issue. We talked about different parts of the Black wealth gap and why it happens and why it's here and what we can do about it. Savings, making savings, you know, a priority in your household and my household will really help to close that gap, because it's from household to overall community. If we all get our households and our blocks and our regions wherever we live, and then it turns to states, and then we really see a big difference. But it all starts with us. So that's the end of my talk on this. I'm looking forward to the next one. And thank you so much for tuning in to the Money Wake Up Call. See you soon.